Welcome to the Past Life Project. I'm Monique, hypnotherapist and regression specialist. Let me bring you into my world where just another day in the office is not your typical desk job. In each episode, we will be delving into the extraordinary realm of past lives through my own therapy practice, client stories and interviews, and conversations with practitioners that are utilizing past lives as a powerful modality for healing. Tune in to find out how people just like you are healing from a range of physical, emotional, and spiritual issues by exploring their previous incarnations. Are you ready to dive into the future of therapy? It's time to turn back time with the Past Life Project. Hello, and welcome to the Past Life Project podcast. I'm your host, Monique, hypnotherapist and regression therapy specialist. And for today's solo episode, I wanted to deep dive into a topic that I've been asked to speak about a lot recently, and that's my story. I've had a lot of people that are curious that have asked me, what's your story? How did you get started in this crazy world? How did you get started working with past lives? And it's something that I wanted to talk about for a while now, because not only is it my story of how I got started in hypnotherapy, but it also coincides with what was the most difficult and dark time in my life, and how that all combined with finding this career, or honestly, really how it found me. And I feel like it's very important to tell these stories so others know that they're not alone in their struggles. And my hope is that by sharing a piece of my personal story, that if there's anyone listening that has or is going through a similar situation in their life, that they don't feel so alone, and gives them hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel, because I sure needed a lot of that light when I was in the deep of this. So starting off with how I even got started in this work, I'd been in the graphic design and marketing field for over a decade, and started to feel just discontent with my career. I didn't feel like I was really making a difference. I actually felt like I was pushing a lot of unnecessary things on people and encouraging unnecessary buying. And I just kind of felt stuck then in this place that I knew I didn't want to do this any longer, but I had no idea what was next. And I'm one of those people that to this day still has a hard time with being in limbo and waiting and just allowing things to reveal themselves while I just be. And this was a particularly hard time because I knew I still wanted to work for myself. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just had no clue what that next thing was. And in hindsight, I couldn't have even imagined that this would be it, because I didn't even know this world existed. So how could I bring this as a possibility? All of the possibilities that I was brainstorming at the time were what I knew at the time, but not allowing yet what was to come, what was new that I hadn't even been introduced to yet. And during this time, the world shut down back in 2020. And as lots of us, I think, felt, when everything that is your foundation is shooken up in this way, it really makes you start to question things and explore new things that you hadn't before. So I started exploring and playing with psychic development and energetic development classes. And all of a sudden, this other world that I always knew was there, but couldn't actually access, just started to stream in. And it was really this amazing time of this childlike wonder where all of these possibilities start to open up. And you're starting to play around with the possibilities of what if things aren't exactly as they seem or as I've been taught, and being able to just play and see different results happening from that. And that's what I was seeing in these classes, that I was connecting and using my senses in ways that I hadn't before. And things were just coming and shifting and moving. And during that time, I still remember I was taking a forensic mediumship course, which for me was very out of character because I still to this day very sensitive to anything true crime at all. Not my, not my field at all or my passion. So I have no clue why I landed in this class other than it opened up obviously a lot of things for me. But even at the time, I remember sitting there thinking, I'm not quite sure why I'm here, other than I have this passion to explore this field further. And I fully trust the instructor and want to explore with them. And I remember sitting in a class and doing our work together, and everyone was tuning into the things that I thought they were quote unquote supposed to. And what I was tuning into was miles and miles and centuries away from what our task was. And I was sitting there thinking, I have no idea what this is. I feel like I'm making it up. This is definitely not my assigned task. And our instructor really helped to guide me into following those breadcrumbs, following that trail, giving me that feedback and that validation that I needed to follow this energetic trail. And what came out of it was what I was actually tuning into was the past lives of my classmates. And that's why I was so confused of why do I see, kind of these medieval knights and a monk on top of a mountain when we're supposed to be in, modern era. And that really opened up the door to the whole world of past lives for me. And I started to consume everything around me. Like I'd been in the desert, and this was the water that I longed for so long. I was reading books and listening to podcasts, and it just felt like, oh my goodness, this is a missing piece that I've been waiting for a very long time. Along that way, I had come across a podcast, and listening to it, there was something in the frequency of the voice of the person that was being interviewed that just clicked with me. And I thought, I need to contact this person. I need to follow whatever I'm being pulled towards. And that led me to the world of hypnotherapy and past life regression. And I started doing sessions for myself and my own healing. Because at the time, I still had what I called this itch, where I felt like there was something deeper that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I had been struggling with anxiety for a long time at this point, since my early 20s. So it was over a decade, 15 years-ish later. And I felt better, but there was still things that were just bursting at the seams, and I couldn't get to the root of it, no matter what other therapies I had tried. It felt like regression therapy finally gave me the answers and helped me release that kind of itch in the back that I couldn't quite get to before that. And it really just opened up my world to past lives, to the power of releasing these stuck emotions from our past and what an impact that they have on our current life. As we unraveled these lives, I saw the improvements in real time. I started to become more confident. I was doing new things that I had been hesitant or fearful about in the past. I had all this kind of creativity surging towards me. And it was very, very opening experience and very awe-inspiring. I think if you talk to anyone that's had a past life regression for the first time, it's very mind blowing in a way that all of this information is within ourselves. And all we had to do was go in, tune out the outside world and go in. And it's all accessible, all of these answers inside of ourselves the whole time. During this time, several things came to a head within a very short time frame. I started to get these nudges that the antidepressants that I was on to treat the anxiety for almost a decade at this point were not needed anymore. And that nudge made me feel uncomfortable because although I had never wanted to go on the drugs in the first place, I attributed them to a lot of my healing and well-being, not really realizing at the time that what they were doing was just putting a lid and pushing down any of my unaddressed stuff underneath the surface, which was why I was still getting these panic attacks out of nowhere, that the pot was boiling over and sometimes it would push the lid up and then all the steam would come out in a form of panic attacks that didn't seem related to anything at the time, because everything was still there under the surface. I had just been pushing it down for 9 years. And when those nudges came around was also around the same time that what had turned into me seeking a therapy for myself really started to pull me in as a calling, that I needed to pursue this as a practitioner and not just as a client. So I registered for school. I was about to start in the new year, and I followed these nudges of, okay, maybe it's time to come off of these drugs and really find out who I am without them. I think that really scared me because I didn't know who I was. The past version of myself without them lived in so much fear and anxiety constantly that I didn't want to return to that state. But I really had learned so much about my intuition and following that guidance, and these nudges were just insistent. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this despite the fear. I'm going to do this. I had no idea about how to come off other than you don't come off altogether, and really didn't do my own research. And in the process, ended up giving my power away, which I had done a lot of at the time, to other practitioners and so-called experts and anyone outside of myself, that I trusted them more than I trusted myself. And I had come off almost a decade worth of medication within a 2 to 3 month time frame. And anyone in this world knows that that is just as good as coming off cold turkey and highly unrecommended because of the increased likelihood of experiencing psychotropic drug withdrawals and damage to the system versus going very, very slowly using a hyperbolic taper and doing something in months, which should have taken me years. But I was feeling great. I was feeling amazing, actually. I still remember that summer when I felt like for the first time, my head was clear, that things that didn't even associate with the drugs were lifting because they had just been part of my life for so long. Because of my hypnotherapy sessions, I was more confident and I was writing again, which is something I hadn't done for ages. And then that fall, everything crashed. And I had no idea what was happening to me at the time. All of these symptoms emerged out of nowhere. And we're talking about full brain and multi-system damage, intense symptoms, not just, okay, I have a bit of an upset stomach. I later learned that what I was experiencing was delayed withdrawal from the psychotropic drugs, but no one really was able to justify my experience. The world of Western medicine has very limited training and attributes a lot of these symptoms as emergence of old and justification for why you need to be on these drugs in the first place. I can tell you that what I had experienced and what I continued to experience for the better part of 4 years was not the old symptoms of anxiety. We're talking about brain zaps and shakes that feel like literal electric current in the brain, tremors in the brain, akathisia, which is an unbearable agitation, distress, restlessness, both mental and physical. Brain fog, headaches, full body tremors, full body joint and muscle pain, stomach pain, and nausea, resulting in the inability to really eat for the next couple of months. I survived on smoothies for a long time when I was unable to keep much food down. Food and chemical sensitivities that had come out of nowhere, blood sugar imbalances, morning adrenaline surges, which feel like opening your eyes and being in a full panic attack. So coming from that sleep state into a panic attack first thing in the morning, which are quite terrifying. Increased panic attacks, nothing like I had ever experienced before, that were untriggered by anything, just out of nowhere. The body was just in this state of panic on and off constantly. Neuroemotions, which are really, I don't know how to say other than crazy thing to experience, these intense, magnified, warped, and artificial feeling emotions that seem like they're completely out of context or unnatural to you. Feeling intensity emotions that you've never felt before, these mood swings from extreme emotions to emotional numbness, hormonal imbalances, which meant that symptoms were only increased around the time of my period. Vertigo, dizziness, balance issues, sleep disturbances, and insomnia, total exhaustion, either oversleeping or undersleeping, increased infections. And honestly, the worst of them all were the intrusive thoughts and suicidal ideation. These thoughts that all of a sudden just come into your brain that don't feel like yours at all, and that you are unable to stop or control. And at the same time that all of this was happening, and I was still doing regression sessions for myself, the tone of my session started to change. The tone of the lives we were going into and the amount of trauma started to change. And I still remember what still is the most powerful past life lesson that I have learned, and had also been the longest one to dive into all the aspects of trauma about, just opened up. And this is after working with regression for about 6 months. And all of a sudden, in the psychotropic drug withdrawal, these new lives came up that had deep seated trauma. This emerging emotional trauma that was coming up, and the intensity of working through the body's physical dependence on the drug that was now coming through, just was, I don't know, a formula for just a total train wreck, because everything that I had ever pushed down with these drugs was now coming up to the surface. And I have a working theory from my own experiences, but also working with clients that have gone through these same or similar experiences. We know that psychotropic drugs create an emotional numbing or narrowing of the emotional field and what you're able to experience, both positive and negative. But I believe that there's also some sort of numbing, some sort of lid that's being put on the subconscious as well, and what we're able to access. I've seen that we can only go so far in regression. And then as a taper is introduced and the drugs slowly start to come out of the system, that all of a sudden we're able to access more than we were before. And it's a really interesting observation that there's so much more that's going on, I believe, than the physical. There's a whole world of energetic and spiritual suppression that's happening. And when the lid is lifted off, not only are you experiencing the physical dependent symptoms, but you're experiencing any of that emotional, energetic trauma that the drug has kept down, now coming up ripe to the surface, ready to be dealt with, basically. Looking back now, I'm not even sure how I managed to finish my studies in the extreme state I was in. Often I would log into class in the morning, and thank goodness it was the time of online studies really emerging. So I at least had that comfort that I could be in front of the computer, but we had to have our cameras on. And so I sat in class with a smile on my face and my lower body just in these state of tremor and this panic constantly rising in my chest. I feel that having such a strong pull to this calling provided me with an anchor and something to keep working towards. It was a good distraction. And one of the coping techniques while you're going through antidepressant withdrawal is distraction. That there's some days that are just so horrible, and all you can do is drag yourself out of bed. And instead of focusing on how to make it go away, which can often make things feel worse, distracting yourself can be a savior while your whole body is rebooting and recalibrating and rewiring everything. I'll put some really great resources in the show notes because there are some amazing people doing some really amazing work and bringing awareness to how serious psychotropic drug withdrawal is and how many people are silently suffering or have been gaslit by medical providers to believe that these are returning symptoms. So if you find yourself in this situation, please go check out those notes. There are some amazing people that can help. So while I was doing, deep diving into all of this, the only thing I knew what to do to help myself was to dive into it even deeper. I became obsessed with just trying to figure out what was happening to me and why, and what else I could release to just make the pain and suffering and this whole experience go away. And piling on all of that deep work, I ended up just burning myself physically out from the added energetic work on top, which I believe is an important thing to do because, like I said, when all these things are coming up to the surface, we need to address them. But the intensity and the voraciousness that I approached it, looking back now, it was, of course, a huge learning for me, but it was also an invitation to slow down. But I wasn't listening to the signs at the time. All I could see was I had this goal and I needed to find one more thing that I could fix, I could dig up, I could release. And although I had my cores that were really holding me together, and I still feel hypnotherapy and chiropractic and homeopathy were my cores that allowed me to get through to the other end of this, I was energetically working on trauma in this life and past lives and ancestors. I was working with spirit attachments and entities and cords and vows and contracts and energetic implants and lives, even on other planets and parallel lives, kind of all aspects of energetic work that I could think of and that others could think of. And on top of that, all on the physical side, I was doing IV therapy and taking supplements. I had all these tests, all these blood tests and hormone tests and stress tests, and was doing detox protocols, acupuncture, massage, Reiki, bioresonance, frequency therapy. I was meditating and doing self-hypnosis and listening to endless podcasts and other practitioners, seeing anyone from psychics and healers to shamans. And I so desperately wanted someone to give me the key. I truly believed that I would meet a practitioner, that I would have the one session, and that would be the key. And I continue to give my power away to everyone else instead of bringing it within myself. I truly believe that the answer lied outside of me and not within. And I was physically and mentally exhausted. I was just soul level exhausted and burnt out. All of the past lives that had started to come up just started to almost in a way further validate my experiences. So it turned into what was meant to release all of a sudden kept me stuck in a loop. And because withdrawal stripped me down to the bare bones, it's totally stripped away my identity and who I knew myself as, I started to collect unconsciously these past life traumas and build this huge story around the victim I witnessed myself as life after life. I was tortured and shot and hunted and raped and experimented on. And life after life, my life was in the hands of others. Others had the control over me. And that story was repeating itself in this life. And two lives in particular rose to the top that my subconscious wanted to revisit over and over and over again. And I couldn't figure out why at the time, because no matter which angle we tried, I couldn't get them to release. I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing in these sessions. I was this oddity, and I was at a loss of what I was doing wrong, why others could get better. And at this whole time, I had started practicing as a hypnotherapist. And I felt like it was this cruel irony that the therapy that I was helping so many others with was failing me. And I succumbed to the idea that my purpose was to help others and never myself. Mind you, my story is not typical, that the whole point of regression is to release the energetic charge of our past lives or the past lives that become ripe in this lifetime that we need to address. I don't believe that we need to go back into every single life, but the ones that are relevant to what we're dealing with and the themes in this life that need to come to the surface. The whole point is to release and neutralize. In episode 4, I had interviewed Eva Marquez, and she talks about this interesting phenomenon of starseeds downloading past lives, which is very cool. And I've seen in my work as well. And unknown to me at the time, I had gone from just going into my own past lives to downloading other past lives to kind of perpetuate the story, to bring me these evidence of, look at how many times this has happened. And I started to download all of this other data and became dependent on my own suffering, just like I had become dependent on the drugs. And I just continued to download these lives outside of my own personal experience, almost as this evidence to keep me in this loop of victimhood and to justify the purpose I gave myself, that I was here to help others, but never myself. And I got stuck in this healing loop for a while. And I have so many that come to me that are at this place of, I have tried everything and I am doing everything that I am supposed to be doing. And I still can't get to where I want to be. I'm stuck. I'm going in circles. I'm in this loop. And I was in that loop very stubbornly for a while. For years, I continued on like this while this grueling process of healing went on in my body and my mind. And to the outside world, you would have had no clue what was going on in my life, except for a very small handful of people. I got really good at acting and put on a smile on my face and saw my clients. I started my practice during this time. It was one of the hardest things that I had to do, was to continue going on when I didn't want to go on anymore. And I had those few lights in my life that really kept me going. My family, the few friends and mentors that I confided in and worked with during this time, this new calling that I was being pulled toward, they were these flickers of hope that kept me going. And along the way, there were very important people in my life that offered me a little piece of a flame of hope when I couldn't hold it myself. Eventually, the symptoms came, instead of being 24/7, they would come in waves and windows. So I would have days where all of a sudden things lifted, and then I would get hit with the withdrawal symptoms again. And over time, these periods of feeling good started to last a little bit longer, where I could feel good for a week at a time and then go into pretty hard withdrawals for the next month or two. And it's really interesting to look back at how the body slowly healed over time, and those periods of feeling good that I never thought I would be capable of again started to appear more and more frequently for longer and longer periods of time, to the point where now the scales have flipped over and I'm experiencing good days more than bad days. But I would have never believed it at the time. When you are in such a chaotic state, it's really hard to imagine that you'll ever get out of it again. And the only thing that I could do to keep going were grabbing on to these flickers of flame that others gave to me, and hoping that one day I would come out on the other side of things. So much of what I do in sessions with clients is from my own lived experiences. Those have been my greatest teachers, although haven't always recognized them as the teachers they've been. But all the things that I ask of my clients, I have been there and I have done that work, and I know exactly what it feels like to be on the other side of things. And I feel that gives me a level of empathy and understanding that only lived experience can give you versus book experience. When you're so deep in your own stuff, it's really hard to see with any clarity what's happening at times. And this is a huge reason why I feel it's important to do our own work and also bring in other professionals who have that experience to ask the right questions, who can see from the outside the things that you're blinded to. And for me now personally, I see everything that I experienced at a crash as a crash course for how I now work with others who are in similar scenarios. The universe likes to do that. As soon as you shift and you master something, you're typically called upon to help others overcome that as well. So how did I get out of that loop? What was, what was the magic key that got me unstuck from it? I think I had to realize that there was no magic key. There wasn't a person, there wasn't a past life or a session that was going to change things. It had to start with me. And I had reached a point where I think I just surrendered. It's sort of reminiscent to childbirth in that way for those that have experienced it, where you can only try and control the process for so long, and then you have no choice but to just surrender. It was at that point that I surrendered, that the awareness that I had been searching for 4 long years of this painful experience had come to me. And the realization that just so effortlessly floated in was that I was learning to love myself in the darkness. The parts of me that I hated the most were the ones that I had to learn to love and accept. The past lives that I pushed away, that my subconscious kept returning to, and I wanted nothing to do with. It's almost like I hated these past life versions of myself. I had to accept and love as well. This realization catapulted me into the most intense, spontaneous shift I had experienced in these 4 years. And things that people that I loved and respected the most in my life had been telling me for a long time, all of a sudden just licked into place. It's like you can't see it all, and it's just going over your head. And all of a sudden, all of these things that were right there in front of me the whole time started to click into place. I had to start by taking my power back from everyone I had ever worked with and gave it away to. I had to bring my power back to me, and all of these pieces, you can almost think of it as putting out an energetic line to everyone who told me who I was. And at times that served its purpose, because I had been so lost and had no idea who I was, that I had some really amazing people in my life that reminded me who I was. But I had to take my power back. I had to tell me who I was and not paint this picture around everyone else's perception. I had to start unplugging from the stories and behaviors I developed in order to cope during this medical trauma. I had to make the change. And that started with the behaviors that were keeping me trapped in this loop of victimhood. Changing the behaviors that hold the stories in place is like melting the glue away. And I really had to actively work on breaking out of victim mode, since at that point it had been pretty deeply ingrained. After all of the digging and work that I had done over the years, the big next key for me was physical embodiment to continue to shift. This was a hard one for me because I had learned and believed that my body was broken, that I didn't trust my body, that it didn't know what it was doing, that I didn't want to be in a body anymore, that I hated being on earth in this physical form. And I just wanted to escape the body. I wanted to do other energetic and spiritual practices as a way to just leave my body for a while. And the next step was coming back into my body. It's so uncanny now looking back and thinking, yeah, I can see that now. I can see how embracing my physical body instead of fixing it was huge, because at the end of the day, we are all souls, but we are souls in a human body, and we cannot ignore the body's needs. And I started to talk to my body like it was a dear friend. It was like dating my body and asking it what it needed and tuning into what made it feel good and didn't, and doing things spontaneously like, hey, body, how do you need to move right now? How can I support you? What do you need today? It was this period of integration and rest and bringing in everything I had done and learned and integrating it on a physical level, on a cellular level. And I had a hard time with rest. I felt like if I was resting, I was not doing anything productive towards my healing. And it was very hard for me, and still is hard for me, to just breathe. This experience has really changed how I view the role of the suffering in human lives. While I was in the middle of this experience, which I'll say I'm probably 80% physically healed from at this point, 4 years later, I couldn't understand why not only me, but so many people around me were suffering unnecessarily. All of these people that were amazing, kind, gentle people, why they had to suffer, why the loved ones around them had to suffer. It had come to me, this realization of, oh, what a catalyst for growth and transformation that suffering is. It can really catapult us into versions of ourselves that we never thought were imaginable before. And if you can harness that and shift out of it quicker and not unnecessarily stay in the loops, you can use it as this amazing tool, in the same way that anger doesn't have to be something that we're fearful of. You can harness anger as passion, as creativity, as this amazing energy. During those years, and still to this day, I continue to learn so much from my clients, so much more than I think most of them will ever realize. That being able to sit in a room with another human who trusts you completely to go very courageously into the darkest places of themselves, and come out on the other side, this empowered, amazing being, and being able to witness that over and over in people, the capability that humans have to heal, really restored my faith in my own ability to heal. So I have to thank my clients who have helped me to heal with their beautiful insights, more than they'll ever know, because believing in you allowed me to believe in myself. I feel so incredibly grateful to have encountered and worked with some pretty amazing humans during my journey. To Amy, Laura, Steve, Jeremy, Margaret, Alana, and Faith, you held up the mirror and allowed me to take back a piece of myself and gave me permission to accept me. To my children, who gave me the thing that was worth pulling through everything for. They were and still are my guiding light, and throughout all of this had unknowingly kept me going just by their
sheer presence and being themselves. Being your mother is the greatest gift. And finally, to my loving husband, Colin, who was there for every moment of pain and ugliness and desperate uncertainty. And also when those little rays of hope started to emerge. He never left my side or wavered in his belief in me and my capability to truly heal.
Where does that leave me today? I really believe that the things that we deep dive in the most in our lives is what we get called to teach to others, and whatever that way it may be. It doesn't have to be as a practitioner. It could be as a parent, a neighbor, a friend, a spouse. And I feel grateful every day that I'm able to do this work and shared this lived experience with others that are on this journey together, because we really are all walking each other home at the end of the day. People can only be several steps ahead of you in their journey and be able to teach you things and show you things about yourself that you weren't able to see. And that's all it really is being that one or two steps ahead and being able to help someone else with that very thing that proved so difficult for you. And I almost think of it as we truly are just holding each other's hands and pulling each other through this human experience together. For the first time in my life, I feel like I have not found a career. I have found a calling, that calling has really found me. It might have dragged me kicking and screaming for a long time, but everyone I have the pleasure of working with truly fills me up. This is some of the most profound and impactful work that I have personally experienced. And I'm grateful that I get to share that with others on their journey. Thank you for being here and for sharing this space with me and listening wherever you are to my story. It really means a lot to me to have so many that give me their time to share this space with. And I am very grateful for every single one of you that tunes in. We'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Past Life Project. For more information how I can help you to access the wisdom of your subconscious mind to support deep healing and transformation, visit my website at moniqueglover.com. If you loved what you just listened to, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Until next time.